Good afternoon. My name is Michael Bish. I'm the executive director of Yolo Food Bank. I'm super pleased to be hosting this last conversation that we're going to have here. Before I introduce my two wonderful colleagues here and partners of Yolo Food Bank, I'd like to circle back to the three summit questions that we set out to answer over this 3-day summit, and then see what kind of progress we've made towards answering those questions. So as a reminder, the first question was, what is an equitable, sustainable local food system? The second one is, how can it be achieved? And then the third one is, why does global human health, economic and social well-being, and advancement depend upon it now more than ever? And as I mentioned, I have two terrific food bank partners here with me that can help us determine what kind of progress we've made towards answering those questions over these last 3 days. And so with that, I would like to introduce Trish Kelly, the Managing Director of Valley Vision. Thanks for joining us, Trish. And then also Paul Tower, the Executive Director of the Community Alliance with Family Farmers. And before we start diving into this conversation, I'd like to give each of them an opportunity to share with the summit attendees a little bit about their organizations and the role that they play in the local food system. So why don't we start with you, Trish?
Thank you so much, Michael. And I'm so pleased to be here today. It's really an honor to be kind of in the closing sessions and see how this all ties together. And I love what you said about, being inspired and moving out now to the community and going to action. So it's just been an incredibly rich experience listening to everybody today and the last 2 days, and hearing about the passion and commitment that this community has to make sure that we do have all the things that you've talked about, the equity and the resilience. And I'm just so inspired by all of the conversation. So Valley Vision, as you've probably heard over the last few days, is a civic leadership organization serving primarily the greater Sacramento region. And you've heard from Evan Schmidt, our CEO, in the opening days, and Grace Kaufman, our program manager for our food work. You saw our food system resilience poll and a preview of our food system action plan. So those are two of the big things that we are working on, and very excited about that, because Valley Vision's role is to create information that is leading to action. So that's one of the really important things that we try to provide for the communities, and to encourage leaders to take action as well. But we have a long history, more than 25 years working in the food and ag space. And over the years, we've done such things as managing the food system collaborative, starting in 2009, that brought many different kinds of partners and sectors together to take a regional approach to our food system. And that was through the support of the California Endowment. And that work morphed on to working more on healthy foods with school wellness programs. And Paul was very involved in actually what came next, which was the Sacramento Food Policy Council. We've also done a lot of work with the Council of Governments, SACOG, on food hub work, really working across the network, the whole region, on ways to connect our local markets with local foods. And we've just, over the last several years, we've been very involved on the economic development side with our food and ag economy cluster, to try to advance projects that we can talk about further, but that really do lift up opportunities for this sector to create jobs, healthy living wage jobs, and sort of be a leader and an innovator. And you've heard a lot of examples of the innovation side and how that can support everything from urban farms to institutional procurement, and ways to support our local market development. And a couple of more things right now, we're working on our regional economic strategy with partners like SACOG, the Metro Chamber, and the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, and the Cal Asian Chamber. And so part of the role of that, which is funded by the federal U.S. Economic Development Administration, is to support initiatives in the food and ag sector. So we have an opportunity to support local partners connecting with federal and state agencies to create investment in the region. But we're really excited about the opportunity to talk about the Food System Action Plan further today, because we've just had so much input and so much collaboration, and I think we've got a great path forward. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Trish. And I couldn't agree more about that food system action plan. I think that's going to prove to be a huge service both to the Yolo County community and the region as a whole. So Paul, you too are a terrific Yolo Food Bank partner, and I'm super pleased to have you join us. And I'm sure everybody would love to hear about the great work that you guys do.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Trish. Pleased to be here with you as colleagues, and pleased to help complete this several-day conference. I think a lot of tremendous speakers and topics discussed. We'll do our best to wrap things up as best we can and cheerlead the region moving forward. As Trish said, I work with both the Sacramento Food Policy Council, and I'm executive director of the Community Alliance with Family Farmers, who I'm primarily representing today, but happy to speak on kind of a regional scale as well. And I'm here with my backdrop representing TS Glide Ranch, which is the headquarters for CAF in Yolo County. I'm also a graduate of UC Davis, and excited to just root myself in Yolo County and the region overall. I wanted to just talk a little bit about CAF and our history, and I thought it was useful stories I think are useful in helping us understand food and what food's impact is and what we should be doing in the food system as we look to addressing larger societal issues. One of the things, the story of CAF, the Community Alliance with Family Farmers, and how we came to be, I think is easiest to place around one historical event. And so this is the introduction of the tomato harvester by some UC Davis researchers in 1963. And so this is at the moment of the Bracero program was coming to a close in California. The loss of potentially very cheap and really, frankly, exploitative labor was changing in California. And it was a moment of farmers concerned about what the future of production actually looked like. And along came a moment of introducing a new technological device, the tomato harvester, that meant to save a lot of labor in the region, to make it much easier to harvest tomatoes as quickly as possible. And that device, at the same time, really challenged a lot of the ways that smaller scale farmers were producing tomatoes, particularly processing tomatoes. And so I think, these are many of the quandaries I think we have when we think about what are the solutions and paths forward in the food system are opportunities to address exploitation and challenge, as well as also introduce potentially new variables that present new challenges. And I think the tomato harvester is really interesting in that way, in which it fundamentally shifted and changed the entire course of agriculture in California. Within 5 years of introduction, led to the loss of most small tomato processors in the state, over 4,400 of 5,000 tomato growers in the state, to 82% consolidation of the entire industry in just 5 years' time, and to fundamentally changing jobs, livelihoods, and communities overnight. At the same time, it also led to a reaction, a moment of folks recognizing about the course of history and what we should be doing with respect to small farms and respect to our local food economies, and led to the creation of CAF, our community of farmers and people that came together and said we wanted to do something different. It led to the creation of the UC Small Farm Program at UC. It led to the creation of the UC Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program at UC, all these housed in our Yolo County region. And so I offer those as both the challenge, the reaction, the opportunity. All of these things can come out of these defining moments in agriculture, and our organization is one of them. We've continued to do much of the same work since. I shared some of these challenges persist since before the 60s even, right, in agriculture, and we continue to work on many of these same challenges today. The histories of historic oppression and racism, but this disconnect between farmers and communities, market consolidation, climate instability, the lack of a coordinated voice for farmers. And that is the work that we continue to do today. So we are advocates for small family farmers. We tend to represent farmers in the Sacramento region, Yolo County, as well as the greater state of California that are, 180 acres, maybe around 200 acres or less. These are folks that are connected to the land. This is a majority of farmers in California. They are grossing $100,000 or less, netting far less, operating on very thin margins. And I think this is the types of folks that are connected to us in our communities around agriculture, and the types of investments we need to make sure that we want to see sustainable agriculture and sustainable communities. Socaf runs 4 primary programs. We do work around ecological agriculture, helping folks with on-farm production practices, sustainable pest management, et cetera. We help folks get things to market. We have a farm to market program. So whether it's schools and institutions or directly at the farmers market, where you might see a lot of folks, we help folks with the sort of urgent needed services, food safety plans, or scale appropriate technology. And then we often act as a voice for this collective of farmers that aren't necessarily represented any other way through policy and advocacy work. We also spend a lot of time just trying to understand what farmers' challenges and needs are. This is an example of the last 10 topics that farmers presented to us out of many surveys earlier this year about the things they said mattered most to them. These came to the top. And so we try to take that listing about what farmers' needs are and then put that into practice. So this is just a list of a few of the victories we had at the state level this year. Tens of millions of dollars of investment in community food hubs or pest management, technical assistance, farmer and farm worker training, those types of things. But this work is, never done. It is these challenges in our food system persist. And so I look at folks like the Maines that live out in West Yolo County, outside of Cape Bay, that have seen their wells drop 20 feet in the last 3 months because of extreme use of water in the region. And so I offer that things like the drought remain significant challenges, climate instability, significant challenges that we must contend with. And that's where much of the work that we have ahead of us remains. But like the tomato harvester, maybe the drought is an opportunity to reinvent what comes next. And so I'm excited to dig into the discussion more with all of you.
Thank you, Paul. Stories are so powerful, and I really enjoyed the way you kicked off your presentation with that tomato harvester story. And Trish, thank you for reminding me that I actually fumbled the beginning of this panel discussion. I actually meant to start with something that the Food for Fairness Summit poet, Dr. Andy Jones, mentioned to kick things off this morning. The quote that I pulled from him was, "We've gathered together to find inspiration here at this summit," and I think that is indeed true. That is why we gathered here, and as far as I can tell, it's worked. I was mentioning to you, Trish and Paul, while we were still off camera, that I feel like my head is exploding. There's been so many terrific ideas that have been floated through these 3 days, and so many terrific stories and victories and advances, and a lot of the technological and science conversation. I was just like, I can't even keep up with this stuff. And so hopefully over the next 3 months, somebody will be able to clue me in on exactly what some of that stuff meant. So I know I'm going to be pretty busy. But let's circle back now to the three summit questions, and I'm going to go through them one by one. I'm going to share a little bit about what I thought I heard over the summit, and then I'd love to gain your perspectives, Trish and Paul. And I should also mention to everybody that's participated in the summit or is attending the summit that we would love to hear from you as well. So if you have your own thoughts, if there's things that you think we missed that are super important to this conversation, we would like to gather those comments so that we can work away on this stuff in advance of next year's summit, because this is the inaugural summit and we're going to be doing this every year. And so if you have comments, please email them to foodforfairness@yolofoodbank.org. Of course, many of you have my own personal email. You're welcome to, not my personal email, my Yolo Food Bank email address. You're welcome to email me at that address or call me on my cell phone as well. But a better way to keep a record is to email it to foodforfairness@yolofoodbank.org. So let's move on to that first question. that we posed at the outset. What is an equitable, sustainable local food system? And of course, the first panel conversation Tuesday morning now, 3 days ago, really dove into that. And I thought that was a really inspiring conversation that those three individuals had. And what I heard from them was the food system is the base system of civilization. I love the way that was phrased. It is foundational to our health and well-being, our economies, and our communities. The system must be democratized to make it sustainable and equitable. And I should say that of these things that I'm calling out here, these are big buckets. So there was lots of pieces throughout the 3 days that land in those buckets. But that's what I've heard throughout the summit, and in particular during that first panel discussion. So I'm curious, Trish, what your take on that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think as I was listening through the 3 days, I heard those answers to those questions very beautifully done in lots of different ways. And of course, through our food system action plan, that's the foundation of the approach that we have been taking and listening for and trying to hear what people are saying about all of that, and then synthesize it and pull it together in a message for action. So I can say that this action plan is an update of the work that we did with the Community Foundation in 2015. And a lot of the themes were there before, but they're much more pulled up now and much more present and front and center around equity and sustainability. And the central question for me in all of that, which I think if you go back to the basis of civilization and people not having want and hunger, is how can we have hunger, such profound levels of hunger, in a community of great food abundance? And so to us, that's a call to action, and it's a moral imperative. But there's so much to unpack under that. What are the conditions that lead to hunger? Because it's a proxy, maybe you could say, for poverty. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there. And I was listening to Santana, I think, who said this morning, like, you have the frame, you have the big picture, but start with something specific to make progress on the issue. So I feel like in that last 3 days, we've gotten a lot of specific things that we can do to work on to change that trajectory, that we have specific examples of things that are working. And then to me, for the democratization of it, it's empowerment. It's ensuring that people have the tools. And there were a lot of words used like leveling up, or access was a theme that came through a lot to us, I think. And that has many different dimensions, but we can't go forward without access to all of the things that people need to thrive.
Yeah, very, very well said, Trish. I'm reminded now, as you mentioned, the leveling up of the West Sac farmer, the urban farmer. I've forgotten his name right now.
Nelson.
Nelson, that's right. Yeah. And his metaphor of the fruit tree, right? And that some of us are taller and we can reach the fruit at the top, the middle, and the bottom, and some of us are a little bit shorter and can only reach the middle and the lower fruit, and then some of us are much shorter and can only reach the lower hanging fruit, and we really need ladders so that we can reach all the fruit just like everybody else. So that notion of equity was the way he phrased it, I thought was pretty powerful. So Paul, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and appreciating everything. Yeah, and appreciating the reflection on folks like Nelson, who serves on our CAF policy committee and is often helping guide some of the development of policies that we think need to reflect, the history of equity, both in our region as well as in the state and in agriculture. I mean, I think we don't have to go far back in our own country's history to recognize, the history of the extreme history of racism has had in agriculture, whether it's slavery, whether it's, farm workers, whether it's, various immigrant communities of Southeast Asian, particularly Hmong and Mien growers in our region, wars, migration of peoples pushing out because of how they were treated in other countries or in our own, have had significant impacts on our agricultural system, and frankly, have often been built upon the exploitation of them, right? And I think that's what we acknowledge here, and why we have a system that is so fundamentally misaligned, broken, and not serving those that need it most, is that it is built upon those fixtures, and it is performed based upon that history. And so I think we can never ignore that. We can never ignore the reality of pushing people off the land, and the history of who held the land here in this region, whether it's the Patwin or other, I live on Nishanan land, that the land of the people that was here. And so I just reflect on all of that as the history of, land, access to resources, access to capital, access to, to knowledge. All of these things have disproportionately favored, white men like me, right? And I think we have to first start by acknowledging that, and then recognize fundamentally what are the changes that we need to make to systems and structures that address those inequities and realign our systems to work favorably for those that have been pushed out. And so, yeah, I think so much of what my reflection is, I think many of the speakers that you touched on have raised those points throughout the course of the last few days, and in their work. And I think that's the work ahead of us, is holding on to a historic redress, and building room for economic development, prosperity, and leadership by those that have been pushed out. And so I think that's so much of, of the work that I come back to, and this true democratization of it. One of the things that I come back to, with the Sacramento Food Policy Council, or some of the local work that I do with Trish, is we don't have departments of food. There's no such thing as a department of food at the local level. There's no city or county department of food, right? Or food systems. You can go to the environmental health office, you can go to the county ag commissioner, you can go to, the planning agents, the planning department. They all hold these little nuggets of our food system. And the challenge that we're all stuck with then is, we are the weavers, right? We all have to try and weave those things together and bring the pieces together to advance the types of change we'd like to see. And I think that's both, that's the challenge before all of us. When you talk about democratizing it, is finding ways to access and engage in, and make sure those institutions reflect the types of changes we'd all like to see. Because fundamentally, if we don't do that, we don't become the Department of Food in our city or county or state government. No one else will. And so I think I'd offer that as the challenge and opportunity for us.
Yeah, that advocacy piece is critical to bridging these gaps and solving these historical inequities that you were describing. This isn't quite a lightning round, but it's pretty close. We weren't left with a whole bunch of time for a 3-day wrap up here. The next question: how can such a system be achieved? What I heard there was an urgent, transformative, disruptive innovation for food, health, and healthcare is what's needed. Bring in diversity to the table and a multidisciplinary approach to solutions. Pivot from a focus on producing calories, pounds, and profits instead to advancing metabolic health, i.e. farm to fork to health is what I heard from one of the speakers. And then, my own personal takeaway from the Valley Vision Food System Action Plan, which Trish mentioned just a moment ago, urgent implementation of that plan is a good start. And we have a question in the chat that says, hey, what are some immediate actions we can do to positively make an impact in the local food system? Well, there are 6 clear-cut actions identified in that action plan. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me. So, Paul, what did you hear as far as how can we move this food system forward in addition to the critical advocacy that you already mentioned?
Yeah, Michael, it's a really good question. I think, the challenge is, as I mentioned to the last question, is that we have to engage the systems and make them work for us, right? And that requires participation. That requires bringing in voices that haven't historically been listened to or heard in the right spaces. And that means that we have to foster that kind of both leadership and space for voices that haven't had access. As Trish said, access is a key word to those institutions. And so I think about, you spoke to Nelson, I think someone who has not had access to land historically and is on the hot pursuit of trying to find a long-term lease. How can someone like Nelson actually have access to land? I've utilized my own personal relationships to help him access a different land parcel, because that's access that I have. That's on us as an institution to provide that kind of support. But I'm just one person providing one kind of support. How can our democratic institutions, our local governments, agencies provide that support as well? And how can we help uplift them to do that? How can the Department of Conservation or local planning agencies secure land in meaningful long-term leases so that farmers can stay on it and make the types of investments that we want in the land, in the soil, in the water, so that it will remain for future generations and not be exploited in ways that damage it or harm us or our air, our people. And so I think those are some of the sort of actions that we need to take, are helping connect our institutions to the real challenges. I think about folks. I think about folks like the City Tree Nursery, Planting Justice, and Three Sisters Gardens in Sacramento, who the city has actively sought them out to connect them to that land that has been held in city trust for a while, sitting next to an airport, largely abandoned. They're actually getting folks onto the land to actually produce food, do job training, particularly for formerly incarcerated or at-risk youth. So creating job opportunities, and then actually providing actual training skills that people can apply and use elsewhere in agriculture, as well as actually providing local food. So a previously vacant site the city held, wasn't using for any purpose, was going, into disrepair. City is now converting into economically vibrant opportunity, as well as job training and supporting our community, getting rid of that sort of blighted spot. These are the types of actions that our communities can take with the right kinds of leadership. And so I guess I come back to, with a little bit of pressure and support, our leaders, our electeds, our agencies need to help provide that kind of support and leadership to make sure that our community members can really excel in the ways that they want to be prosperous local businesses and active citizens.
Paul, I love the way you stole a little bit of Trisha's thunder here,
Always.
that access issue, that providing the access to land, capital, and other resources is one of the actions from Trisha's action plan. So go ahead, Trish. What are your thoughts about how we go about creating this equitable, sustainable food system that we all dream about and desire?
Thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, I think the disruption's already here. Not only the pandemic, but it felt kind of biblical in the last year while we were doing the input sessions for the food system action plan. There were droughts and fires and terrible air quality and floods back east. And so we're in the moment now, but there is the transformation already happening. It happened, I think, with the pandemic, especially. I think it was incredible how the community came together to respond. And this community has heart, and it's got brains, and it's got talent, and it's got examples of things that are already happening that we just need to continue to support and scale. But I think what Paul was talking about, the way some of the local governments have begun to invest in projects that really do not only repurpose land, but they provide opportunity for people. They provide skills. These are new enterprises, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit. And I can think of several examples, like the City of West Sacramento's Urban Farm Program. What the City of Sacramento did with the property that Paul mentioned is not only did they make this usable, but they helped get federal partners in and the state, or, we got something out of the state budget for that, and bringing partners in and local food, local places designation with EPA. So the local governments can be a catalyst for these kinds of things. The Yolo County Board of Supervisors just approved some funding for the Yolo Food Hub. That's been a dream for a long time. These things are beginning to come to fruition, but like Paul said, there isn't sort of the Department of Food and Ag at the local level. So how do we catalyze and support these projects to go forward? So, but I do think that there are many practical examples that we heard about them, and the food system plan recommends, investing in these things and providing the capacity support too, so that we can make sure that these opportunities are widely shared. And I do just want to note one other comment about what we can positively do to make an impact on the local food system. Institutional procurement, taking the buying power of our schools and hospitals and making them work locally for our farmers and food producers and food distributors for healthy food, nutrition providing food, for a health promoting food system will transform our food system. And it will give us resiliency, and it will make sure that we can endure future shocks, and will create economic opportunity for our communities. So that's a big priority for us. And you saw Santana this morning talking about that at UC Davis Health, some of the changes that they've made. And when they can buy locally from local growers and support local operations, and now they're talking about a partnership with Sac City Unified School District to jointly procure food, or that Sac City Unified could be a vendor for them. You're talking about market power, and that can drive positive, equitable change.
That is an exciting opportunity, the local institutional buying. And I'm looking forward already to next year's summit, so that we can have a panel conversation around how much we've advanced that opportunity over the next year. So I look forward to a lot of progress being made in that regard. Let's move on to the why question. I don't know that we need to go into too much depth on this one, because we've already kind of explained why we need such a system when we were talking about the what and the how. But if you have additional thoughts about why we need an equitable, sustainable food system instead of just settling for the food system that we have right now, go ahead. Who would like to go first on that?
I guess I'll go first, Trish.
I was waiting for you.
I mean, there's so many ways to answer that, Michael, right? Yeah. I think there's a moral imperative to it, but there's an economic imperative. There's so many ways to approach it. I think the reality is we don't have another choice, and we can't keep going as business as usual. That we are losing. From our perspective, we're losing farmers. We are losing economic development opportunities, losing jobs. We are perpetuating a system that mirrors, many of the larger societal challenges we have right now. As Trish said, food is really a reflection of societal wealth and poverty. And I think we are seeing that in our food system, and we have opportunities to change it. And I think that's where I see what I see is the why is we can't treat people, poorly in our food system, our farm workers, our food chain workers. We have a moral responsibility to treat people better. We have an economic one of, we pay people better wages. They can spend that money in our communities, and that can further have that multiplier effect on growing our regional economic wealth. We have a responsibility to future generations. I've got two young kids. I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. I don't want them to have air quality issues. I don't want them to suffer through droughts. I don't want them to suffer through future challenges of climate instability. We have a responsibility to take care of future generations. So I think I could go on with this list, but to say I think there are a lot of imperatives in front of us, and we have that opportunity to rise to that occasion.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and oh, go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
No, thanks, Paul. Go ahead, Trish.
Well, the other piece is it's the place piece. It's the place where we live, the stewardship that we need to show. Our systems are in crisis, our natural systems. They can't sustain us and support us if we don't steward them as well. And to me, farmers are the stewards of the land, but we all have that responsibility. And I think that it came through so clearly again in the food system action plan and in the food poll about the concern for the climate and the world that we're leaving for our children, and the need to remediate and improve the environment. And I think, food and agriculture is our regional competency, and we have so many talented people, from the farmers and the ranchers to the nonprofits that are working on those environmental solutions, to the state and federal agencies that are going to invest, but UC Davis and the entrepreneurs who are out there developing new technologies and science and tools. We have everything here that I think we can really, that's another area where we really need to focus for a healthy, sustainable, equitable food system. It has to be all pieces working together.
Yeah. What I heard a number of times during the summit is this need for urgency, right? We can't be lackadaisical about this, that there's this imperative, urgent need for action. Trish, you were mentioning some of the benefits, the silver lining to the pandemic was that it created this sense of urgency to address these gaping gaps. That doesn't make any sense, but these huge gaps in the system that have been unveiled by the pandemic. So my one concern, and I hope my concern is misplaced, is that this sense of urgency dissipates over time, particularly when certain segments of our community still are doing very, very well in the pandemic, and those are the folks that typically are politically more active, and unfortunately for those that aren't so well off, have quite a bit of sway with electeds. This urgency has to remain in place if we're going to push some of these actions forward. Just to round off this piece, what I heard is we need this better system to promote individual health and wellness, to meaningfully address or even hopefully end food insecurity, to support our vulnerable small farmers and ag workers, to address food supply disruption, which is still ongoing to this day. It has not gone away. There's massive disruption right now. To address social and economic justice, climate action. We're falling short of our climate action and adaptation goals, so we need to do something urgently. And thriving and resilient communities. We need this system in order to have thriving and resilient communities. And unfortunately, we don't have such communities. We have parts of communities that are resilient and thriving, and other parts that aren't. So that's what I heard. And the reason why I'm talking so fast is we are so limited in time here, because there's still a really big thing that popped up on day 2 of the summit, which I did not see coming. So Harold Schmitz, thank you. Harold Schmitz, visiting professor at UC Davis. Thanks for throwing this curveball out here in the form of a challenge. Yolo Food Bank likes to pride itself, or at least attempts to be nimble and resourceful. So I'm going to do my best to take up this challenge that Harold tossed out there. And paraphrasing what he said in his day 2 opening remarks was, my challenge for this summit is to identify measurable activities and projects that we could advance over the course of the coming year. Not 5 years, not 10 years, over the course of the coming year, hold ourselves accountable and report out on during next year's Food for Fairness Summit. We have a unique array of partnerships that can achieve transformative innovation outcomes with respect to food security, fairness, and equity to improve metabolic health, cognitive health, quality of life, and economic prosperity. And I thought that was so well said when he said that Tuesday morning, to the point where I've gone back and reviewed his comments several times earlier today. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some of these activities and projects that we can identify? And again, for other attendees who aren't participating in this, for other panelists and whatnot that aren't participating in this particular panel, and for the attendees, if you have thoughts on this, and I'm sure you do, we'd love for you to email those to foodforfairness@yolofoodbank.org. So Trish, I think I'd love to see you go first on this one.
Thank you very much, Michael. So two things for us, metrics that came up very clearly through the Food System Action Plan were reducing the number of food insecure and nutrition insecure residents in the region. And there are a lot of variables that affect that outcome, but making sure, first of all, that the emergency food system is supported and all the partners that have been working together so hard in the last year and a half to address the standing issue of food insecurity, but also the huge impact and increase. And how do we take those partnerships forward, really try to make that change happen so that next year those numbers are lower. The other metric that I think is something we could make progress on is the number of eligible residents who are enrolled or not enrolled in the CalFresh, the food assistance program. Sacramento County is the only one that has a high level of participation. The other 3 counties in the region that we studied are between 40 and 50%. The estimates are that we're leaving $146 million on the table that could be used to support our local growers and food distributors. So that's a very tangible way. I'd love to see us really have a concerted effort in the region to increase that enrollment. I know a lot of great partners are working on that, but how can we move the needle on that? That will really reduce food insecurity and be an economic stimulus.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, many of we talk about these vulnerable small farmers and the many vulnerable ag workers. Many of these same individuals are the ones that aren't participating in that program, and they very well could be participating in the program. But there's a number of barriers for them to access that. And I think your call to action, Valley Vision's call to action on that is a terrific one that I'm fully behind.
Thank you.
Paul.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Trish and you, Michael, on that. I think we're leaving dollars on the table, dollars that can recirculate in our economy, but also particularly get food to hungry families. So couldn't agree more on that. And I think it's just an illustration of so many of the programs that we see where the administrative loophole or hoops folks have to jump through are so significant that they make it nearly impossible for folks to participate. And so I think one of my ongoing sort of messages is, how do we simplify these programs, whether it's the small farmer I work with that can't fill out the 10 grant applications, or the family that's trying to seek CalFresh EBT benefits, whatever it might be. Like, we need to make those systems work simply, easily, and flexible so folks can get those dollars and put those resources back into our communities. So all for that. I think in terms of other, actionable steps, it's hard on a year time frame, but I think more farmers graduating from farmer training programs. We've talked about, and you see it in the Valley Vision Plan, the average age of the farmer keeps going up. We have fewer folks connected to the land. We have partners like Center for Land-Based Learning that runs the Farm Academy that's helping, lead the way really in the state to help graduate more folks through agricultural training. But we need more folks doing that. We need more folks connected to natural resource jobs. We don't have enough folks coming through. We only have a few programs like CLBL in the state, all but down in Salinas, training former farm workers or Spanish-speaking families. Very small handful of programs like that. And the need for supporting the next generation of farmers is really significant and requires a lot of investment and training. They call you a beginning farmer for the first 10 years of farming for a reason.
Right.
So it takes that long to get the skills. And so I think we need more support for that. Water, land, capital, these are all things. If we can measure how to get more people and long-term relationships, leases, whatever it looks like with the land, the more farmers in those relationships, the more we can see of stability and investment in that land, and as well as market opportunities for them to keep selling into our communities. So if I can add a third, it's more of that procurement that Trish touched on, more local retailers, restaurants, institutions sourcing from local farmers, upticking that number will add that economic stability for our farmers and for our community.
Yeah, and I want to say that there are many practical, tangible things that we can do. For instance, we know that the urban farm programs are working, but we don't have them spread across the region. Community gardens are another thing that came up really as a high priority for people to be able to grow their own food and learn about that and connect their children to food cultures. And the city of Sacramento has a pretty robust program, but their waiting list, and it takes money to do those things. But you can do those things at a relatively reasonable cost. But why don't we have those across the whole region? Market match programs at the farmers market, making sure that people can use CalFresh benefits at all farmers markets. They're very practical things we can do to, get money invested and to get healthy food to people. We can give them a big list, Michael, of where we can make progress.
We should be giving them a big list. There's a gazillion American Rescue Plan dollars in the region right now that could be funding any number of these actions that are called out in your plan. Trish, we only have a couple more minutes here. I would really like to hear from Trish, and if there's still a few seconds left, from Paul on, what are your thoughts, Trish, on how do we advance those 6 actions that are identified in your plan? How do we move those forward in the next year and make meaningful progress?
Thank you, Michael. Well, I think it's a call to action for all of us in the community, and we really hope that it's a clear roadmap for a lot of local elected officials and decision makers who hold some of the investment dollars. But one of the things we want to make sure too is the nonprofit sector really has the resources that they need, because they carry the load, to address a lot of these community issues. But also we'll be continuing to work with the Community Foundation on a food financing strategy, and with other partners like Paul and the Food Policy Council and Soil-Borne Farms and others, to really identify some structural financing mechanisms. There'll be a roadmap for the foundation, but also for all partners of how we invest, how we have a call to action to invest. We have an investment agenda now, so let's figure out the financing strategies and be strategic and intentional also about how we work as a region to leverage these new state and federal dollars. And as a lot of the work that Paul is doing is really advocate at the local level that those recovery dollars really go into the recovery and resilience of the region, because the payback is there.
It sure is. Paul?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Trish. I think, one of the challenges of our region here in the Sacramento region is, we may not be as affluent as the Bay Area and as rich with, private philanthropic dollars. And, we have our share. I'm not going to say we don't, but it's not the same. And that means that we have to get more creative with what we've got. And that means using these, federal dollars. It means figuring out new funding mechanisms, getting real public investments, and thinking about creative things like special districts or whatever it might take, public financing mechanisms that actually invest dollars in the food system. Back to my comment earlier, we don't have a Department of Food. That means there is no public face or space that people interact with food altogether. And so that means all the more work for us to try and thread those things together so that those dollars can actually be held in some place in a public institution and then run back out to this network of nonprofits and partners that Trish spoke to. So I think all on us to figure out how to create that kind of backbone infrastructure that actually gets resources out there at the same time, advancing all of these individual priorities that we talked about.
Well, thank you so much, the two of you, for this terrific conversation. I've very intentionally have carved out a last 4 or 5 minutes here for a special moment. I hope all the attendees will stick with us for these last few minutes. And Tim and Lou, if you would, I'd like to invite everybody that worked on this inaugural summit to join us. And the reason is the lifeblood of Yolo Food Bank is compassion and gratitude. That is what drives the work that we do. And I want to take a moment here to share my gratitude and give everybody that participated in this, that attended or participated in the summit, an opportunity to share our gratitude with the folks that made this all happen. And so I'm seeing a bunch of my fellow summiteers join us here in the Zoom. So welcome super volunteer Bob Smith. He was our summit coordinator that took this crazy idea that I had 9 months ago or so for the food bank to, in the first time in its history, to have this type of summit. So I should say, this was very much an experiment. We talk a lot about innovation. Some of the panelists earlier were saying how you have to try this and that and be able to accept failure. And yeah, we took a risk, and we decided to forge forward in the middle of a pandemic to organize this summit. And Bob was the point man throughout as a terrific volunteer. So thank you so much for that community service, Bob. Thank you to my colleagues, Joy, Corky, Rob, Aaliyah, and Zane. Unfortunately, he can't join us right now because he's busy with actually feeding people, I believe. Man, you guys all have my gratitude for all of the hard work that you've put into this. A number of our panelists, including Trish, really helped us flesh out the agenda, work closely with Bob to design this agenda, also with Rob, and also helped us recruit a bunch of terrific panelists and speakers, including Paul. And so thank you so much, Trish, and the other panelists that not only were panelists, they were recruiters. I think we had a terrific lineup of speakers and panelists and moderators. I could not be more pleased with this production. And I see some head nodding. I think I need to see some more head nodding. And I also want to thank Talon, so Tim and Lou, for the production value here. I thought they were going to join us in this thing. I guess they're bashful or something like that, but they definitely deserve our praise and our gratitude for the production value of this summit. And then Bettercast, who's based in Australia, so that was an interesting dynamic, was the time differential dealing with the folks that are broadcasting this on the internet. So thank you, Bettercast, for making this reality. We appreciate this, you as first-time partners with Yolo Food Bank here in Yolo County, California. So it was terrific to have, I think you're our first Australian partners that we've had in the 50 years of Yolo Food Bank. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if we're going to start getting food donations from Australia now, but we'll welcome those as well as financial donations. So thank you guys for everything that you've done.